Most people see New York as a place of towering buildings and endless city lights, but that image barely scratches the surface. Hidden beneath the modern world is a state shaped by time on a massive scale. New York contains more than half of all the surface fresh water in the United States, a supply so enormous it could support entire nations for generations. Within its borders stand the oldest mountains in the country, formed over 2 billion years ago, long before dinosaurs ever walked the earth. Powerful glaciers once swept across this land, carving valleys, shaping lakes, and leaving marks that can still be seen today. New York is more than steel and concrete. It is ancient water, raw stone, and a landscape forged by forces far older than civilization itself. Today, you are about to discover 35 incredible facts that will change the way you see the true power of the northeastern United States. 35. The sheer size of Adirondack Park is something you have to see to believe. 2. Understand New York's geography, you first need to grasp just how enormous this place really is. When I first went there, I expected a typical state park with a handful of trails and maybe a small visitor center. Instead, I found myself standing in the middle of nearly 6 million acres of protected wilderness. To put that into perspective, Adirondack Park is larger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, Glacier, and the Great Smoky Mountains National Parks combined. It covers an area roughly equal to the entire state of Vermont. Unlike most parks, it is a rare mix of public and private land, often described as a patchwork or fragmented forest. Established in 1892 to safeguard New York's water supply, it is protected by the state constitution and must remain forever wild. With thousands of lakes, rivers, and mountains, you could wander for days and never pass the same place twice. It stands as the true green heart of the Northeast. 34. New York's hidden maritime border, with Rhode Island. Most people can easily list the states that touch New York, usually naming New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont. What almost no one realizes is that New York also borders the smallest state in the country, Rhode Island, but only by water. If you stand at Montauk Point on the eastern tip of Long Island and look out across the Atlantic, you are facing a maritime boundary that wasn't officially settled until the late 20th century. That invisible line runs through the middle of Block Island Sound. It is a narrow stretch of ocean where the authority of the Empire State meets that of the Ocean State. It's one of those geographic oddities that makes for a perfect trivia fact because the two states never touch on land even once. Still, on the water, they are officially neighbors, at least in the eyes of the Coast Guard. And before we move on, make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss more strange and fascinating facts about the geography of our country. 33. The unseen depths of Lake Ontario. New York is well known for its rivers, but it also stretches along the shores of 2 of the 5 Great Lakes. Lake Ontario stands out as one of the most intriguing. It may be the smallest Great Lake by surface area, yet it is far deeper than most people expect and holds an astonishing amount of water. At its deepest point, it plunges to about 802 feet, deep enough that you could place the Eiffel Tower inside it and still have water above the top, partly because the lake sits below the level of Niagara Falls. It collects the outflow from all 4 of the other Great Lakes before sending that water eastward to the Atlantic through the St. Lawrence River. Standing on the shoreline in Rochester, it feels less like a lake and more like an ocean, with the horizon fading into endless blue. Lake Ontario alone contains enough water to blanket the entire state of New York in several feet of depth. 32. The Alpine Tundra, atop Mount Marcy. At the highest point in New York, the summit of Mount Marcy rises to 5,344 feet, and the world up there feels completely different from the rest of the state. Reaching the top, you step into a landscape that looks more like northern Canada or even Greenland than the Northeast. The summit is home to a rare alpine tundra ecosystem, a fragile environment where hardy plants left over from the last ice age cling to bare rock. The climate here is simply too extreme for trees to survive. Across the entire state, only about 85 acres of this unique habitat remain. I remember standing there as powerful winds swept across the stone, feeling as if I had left New York altogether and entered the high Arctic. It is a powerful reminder that New York's geography is not only cities and suburbs, but also ancient, high-altitude wilderness that has endured for thousands of years. 31. The glacial marks of the Finger Lakes. In central New York, the Finger Lakes region stands as a stunning example of what moving ice can create. This landscape was shaped by enormous glaciers as they slowly retreated, carving the land with immense force. There are 11 lakes in total, each long, narrow, and strikingly deep, stretching across the countryside like giant grooves etched into the earth. Seneca Lake is the deepest of them all, descending more than 600 feet below the surface. The Iroquois people, who lived here long before modern maps existed, told a powerful story that these lakes were formed when the Great Spirit rested his hand upon the land, leaving behind the marks of his fingers. Geologically, the truth is just as impressive. Thick ice sheets deepened ancient river valleys and blocked them with glacial debris, trapping vast amounts of water. Today, these deep lakes create a mild local climate, helping regulate temperatures along their shores. This natural balance has turned the region into one of the world's most respected wine-producing areas, where vineyards thrive on hills shaped by ice thousands of years ago. 30. The jurisdictional puzzle of Liberty Island. This is one of the most mind-bending geographic quirks in the country. Even though the Statue of Liberty is the ultimate symbol of New York City, the island beneath it has a surprisingly tangled legal story with New Jersey. Liberty Island is officially an exclave of New York, meaning it legally belongs to New York State, despite being completely surrounded by New Jersey's waters. That arrangement was locked in by an interstate agreement back in 1834. But the story didn't stop there. In 1998, the Supreme Court ruled that while the island's original natural land remains part of New York, all of the land added later, through human-made fill, actually belongs to New Jersey. The result is a tiny patchwork of jurisdictions where standing in one spot puts you in New York, and taking a short walk of just a few steps can place you in a different state entirely. 29. The Grand Canyon of the East. In western New York, Letchworth State Park lives up to its famous nickname. Often called the Grand Canyon of the East, this landscape was shaped over thousands of years as the Genesee River cut a deep gorge straight through solid rock. Towering cliffs rise as high as 600 feet above the river, creating a dramatic scene that feels completely out of place in a region many expect to be flat or gently rolling. 3 powerful waterfalls thunder through the Mullis Canyon, while the river winds through the depths in sharp, twisting bends. I have explored canyons across the western United States, and Letchworth stands right alongside them with its steep walls and dense forests gripping the rim of the gorge. The exposed layers of shale and limestone reveal a deep geological history, telling the story of an ancient sea that once covered this land long before the canyon ever existed. 28. The tallest waterfall in the Northeast. Many people automatically think Niagara Falls is the tallest waterfall in New York, but that belief isn't quite right. Niagara may be the most famous and the most powerful, yet it is not the tallest. That title belongs to Tawanic Falls, located near Ithaca. This waterfall drops an incredible 215 feet straight down, over a wide bowl-shaped wall of rock, making it about 33 feet taller than the American Falls at Niagara. In fact, it is the highest single-drop waterfall east of the Rocky Mountains. The first time I saw it, the scale was overwhelming. The water seems to drift downward rather than crash, simply because the drop is so extreme. Even more impressive are the gorge walls around it, which rise nearly 400 feet high, forming a towering stone corridor that makes you feel incredibly small standing below. 27. The state of thousands of lakes. Minnesota may claim the title of the land of 10,000 lakes, but New York quietly rivals it with an astonishing and far more varied collection of water bodies. Across the state, there are roughly 7,800 lakes, ponds, and reservoirs. These waters range from the vast Great Lakes to tiny, unnamed pools hidden deep within the Catskills and the remote Adirondack backcountry. This incredible concentration of lakes is the legacy of New York's glacial past, when massive ice sheets carved depressions into the land that later filled with meltwater. Viewed from above, the state's map looks almost like lace, punctured everywhere by shades of blue. This watery landscape has shaped New York's history from the earliest fur trading routes to the creation of the Erie Canal, which used this natural network of waterways to connect the Atlantic Ocean to the heart of the continent. 26. A coastline longer than many coastal states. You might not immediately picture New York as a maritime state the way you do Florida or Maine, but its geography boasts an impressive stretch of shoreline. Between the Atlantic Ocean, Long Island Sound, and the edges of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, New York has hundreds of miles of coast. When you include all the islands, bays, and inlets, the total length of its coastline exceeds 500 miles, without even counting the countless miles of rivers and streams. This extraordinary access to water helped New York City rise as a global financial hub, thanks to one of the finest natural harbors in the world. I've spent days driving along the Great Lakes Seaway Trail, and the shift from Long Island's soft sandy beaches to the jagged cliffs of Lake Ontario is a breathtaking journey that showcases just how diverse the state's coastline truly is. 25. The island that isn't really an island. This one tends to surprise, and sometimes annoy, residents of Long Island. According to the United States Supreme Court, Long Island is technically a peninsula. In the 1985 case of United States versus Maine, the court decided that for legal and maritime purposes, Long Island is legally connected to the mainland. This ruling was designed to give New York and Rhode Island control over the waters of Long Island Sound, instead of leaving them under federal jurisdiction as international waters. Of course, anyone looking at a map knows it's a huge landmass surrounded by water, but legally the East River is considered too shallow and narrow to truly separate it from the continent. It's a perfect example of how human law can sometimes bend what seems obvious in geography. 24. The river that moves in two directions. The Hudson River is one of the most iconic waterways in the world, but for much of its length, it isn't technically a river at all. From New York City up to Troy, a stretch of about 153 miles, the Hudson is actually a tidal estuary. Its waters rise and fall with the Atlantic Ocean's tides, and saltwater pushes far inland. The Mohican people who lived along its banks long before European settlers arrived called it Mohecantuck, meaning the river that flows two ways. I've spent time on the docks in Albany, and it's astonishing to watch the current move upstream carried by the incoming tide, even though the ocean is more than 100 miles away. This unusual mix of salt and fresh water creates a thriving environment for sturgeon and other species that flourish where the mountains meet the sea. 23. The tallest natural point on the Atlantic coast. When most people picture New York City, their minds jump to the Empire State Building or One World Trade Center. Yet the city's highest natural point isn't a skyscraper, it's actually on Staten Island. Known as Tot Hill, it rises 410 feet above sea level. That might seem modest compared to the Rockies, but it makes Tot Hill the tallest point along the entire Atlantic coastal plain from Florida all the way up to Cape Cod. This unusual elevation was created by a terminal moraine, a massive pile of rocks and debris left behind by a retreating glacier. I always find it amusing that the city's highest natural vantage point is tucked away in a quiet residential area where you're more likely to spot a deer than a yellow cab. 22. The world's end of the Hudson. Just upstream from the United States Military Academy at West Point lies a spot on the Hudson River known as World's End. This is the river's deepest point, plunging more than 200 feet below the surface. The geography here is striking. The water is forced through a narrow, steep gorge carved between the mountains of the Hudson Highlands. The currents are notoriously dangerous, squeezed into this tight channel and swirling unpredictably. Sailors have long feared this stretch, where extreme depth meets a sudden sharp bend in the river. It's a reminder that the Hudson is far more than a scenic backdrop. It's a powerful, ancient geological force that continues to shape the land and demands respect from all who navigate it. 21. The man-made mystery of Uthant Island. Nestled in the middle of the East River, just across from the United Nations headquarters, lies a tiny patch of land known as Uthant Island. By size, it's the smallest island in Manhattan, and it didn't even exist before the 1890s. Its creation was entirely accidental, formed from the rubble and debris left over from building a trolley tunnel beneath the river. Originally called Belmont Island, it was later renamed to honor former UN Secretary General U Thant. Today, the island is a protected sanctuary for migratory birds and is completely off limits to people. I love the idea that in one of the most crowded cities on Earth, there exists a tiny human-made island where only birds can roam, showing how geography can be shaped by humans and then reclaimed by nature. 20. The ancient volcanic cliffs of the Palisades. If you glance across the Hudson River from Manhattan, you'll notice a dramatic line of sheer cliffs known as the Palisades. These aren't just ordinary rocks, they are the remnants of a massive volcanic event that occurred around 200 million years ago. The cliffs are made of diabase, formed when molten magma pushed its way between layers of sandstone and cooled slowly over time. As the rock hardened, it cracked into the striking hexagonal columns visible today. This makes the Palisades one of the finest examples of this type of geology in the world. Every time I take the ferry, I am struck by the stark contrast between the city's steel and glass skyline and these dark, ancient volcanic walls, silent witnesses to the time when the supercontinent Pangaea first began to break apart. 19. The Great Divide of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is celebrated in history as a triumph of commerce, but its geographical significance is just as remarkable. It essentially created a man-made river connecting the Atlantic Ocean to the heart of North America. Before the canal's completion in 1825, the Appalachian Mountains stood as a massive barrier, making westward transport of goods slow and difficult. By carving a 363-mile route through the Mohawk Valley, engineers bypassed the mountains entirely, opening a smooth waterway to the Great Lakes. This transformed the geography of New York, turning tiny villages into bustling port cities like Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. The canal didn't just change the state, it shifted the economic center of the nation, showing how a single engineered channel can reshape the destiny of an entire continent. 18. The Catskills aren't really mountains. This often surprises people who spend weekends climbing the trails of Ulster and Greene counties. Geologically speaking, the Catskills are not true mountains. They are a dissected plateau. They appear mountainous because of their height and steep slopes, but they weren't created by tectonic collisions or volcanic activity. Instead, they were shaped over millions of years as rivers and streams eroded a once flat, high plain. That plain used to lie beneath an ancient sea, which is why marine fossils can often be found on the hillsides. When I hike in the Catskills, I like to picture the landscape as a giant block of wood slowly carved by the tools of wind and water, leaving behind the dramatic peaks and valleys we admire today. 17. The abandoned landscape of North Brother Island. Hidden in the East River, between the Bronx and Rikers Island lies North Brother Island, a place where the city's geography has been left to decay. The island was once home to a quarantine hospital, most famously housing Typhoid Mary for years. After the hospital closed in the mid-20th century, the island was entirely abandoned. Today, it is a haunting scene of nature reclaiming its space, with thick forests pushing through the roofs of crumbling brick buildings. In just a few decades, this small piece of land has transformed from urban site to wild refuge, a rare example of post-human geography. While public access is tightly restricted, a view from a boat reveals how quickly the forest overtakes land once dominated by people, a striking reminder of nature's resilience. 16. The Thousand Islands are actually 1,800. The Thousand Islands, stretching along the St. Lawrence River, form a breathtaking archipelago that sits between New York and Canada. The name, though, doesn't quite tell the full story. To count as an official island, a piece of land must remain above water year-round and support at least 2 living trees. By that measure, there are actually 1,164 islands in the region. Some are large enough to host sprawling stone castles or entire communities, while others are barely more than a single home or a tiny cluster of trees. Boating through this area feels like navigating a watery labyrinth, with new islands appearing around every bend. It's a geographical marvel, a place where the line between land and water is constantly shifting and endlessly enchanting. 15. The Pine Barrens of Long Island. Most people picture Long Island as a stretch of suburbs and sandy beaches, but hidden in its center is a vast and rare landscape known as the Pine Barrens. Covering more than 100,000 acres, this unique ecosystem is dominated by sandy soil and resilient pitch pine trees. It's a remnant of the last ice age, when glacial outwash left behind nutrient-poor soil that only certain plants can thrive in. The Pine Barrens is also crucial because it sits atop a massive underground aquifer, supplying drinking water to millions of people. Walking through it, I felt as if I had stepped into a desert in New Jersey or the Carolinas, completely removed from the busy suburbs just a few miles away. 14. The massive salt mines of Retzoff. Far below the rolling hills of Livingston County in western New York lies a hidden geological marvel few people ever see. This area is home to some of the largest salt mines in the world. Hundreds of millions of years ago, an ancient sea once covered this region, and as it slowly evaporated, it left behind a vast layer of halite. The Retzoff mine was once the largest salt mine in the Western Hemisphere, with underground caverns stretching for miles in every direction. Though the original mine collapsed and flooded in the 1990s, salt mining continues to be a major industry here. It's incredible to think that while driving through the quiet farmland of upstate New York, a massive crystalline world of salt lies hundreds of feet beneath your feet. 13. The intricate geography of Akwesasne. One of the most unusual and complicated regions in New York is the Akwesasne Mohawk Territory. This land sits at the intersection of New York, Ontario, and Quebec, creating a geography that is as complex as it is fascinating. The territory is divided by the international border between the United States and Canada, as well as the provincial line separating 2 Canadian provinces. As a result, a single community is subject to multiple layers of laws and jurisdictions. Traveling from one part of the territory to another often means crossing international borders and passing through customs more than once. It's a rare example of how modern political boundaries can slice through the traditional lands of a sovereign nation, forcing residents to navigate the intertwined realities of geography, identity, and governance across 3 separate systems. 12. The ever-expanding land of Manhattan. If you compare a map of Manhattan from the 1600s to one today, the changes are striking. The island is far from static. It has been steadily enlarged over the centuries through hundreds of acres of human-made landfill. Much of Lower Manhattan, including areas like Battery Park City and the South Street Seaport, was once underwater. Rocks, soil, and even old sunken ships were added to create more land for the city's growing population. Walking through these neighborhoods, you are quite literally treading on the history of Manhattan's expansion. It's a living example of geographical evolution, one that continues today as the city works to protect its shores from rising ocean waters. 11. The rising Adirondack Mountains. The Adirondacks are true geological rebels. Unlike the ancient, gently sloping peaks of the Appalachians, the Adirondacks form a unique circular dome of rock that is still slowly pushing upward. While most mountains around the world are gradually worn down by erosion over millions of years, the Adirondacks are actually rising at a rate of about 2 millimeters each year. This happens because the Earth's crust beneath the region is unusually thin, allowing heat from the mantle to lift the lithosphere like a massive, slow-moving bubble. It's one of the rare places on Earth where standing on a mountain today means you are technically higher than you were last year. While the rock at the core of these mountains is over 1 billion years old, their current shape is surprisingly young compared to the surrounding terrain. Don't forget to subscribe and like to keep discovering incredible facts about each state across our amazing country. 10. The easternmost oddity of Fisher's Island. Ask most people where New York's easternmost point is, and they'll confidently point to the lighthouse at Montauk Point on Long Island. But they'd be mistaken. A closer look at the waters between New York and Connecticut reveals a narrow 9-mile-long stretch of land known as Fisher's Island. Technically part of the town of Southold in Suffolk County, New York, the island sits much nearer to Connecticut's shore. In fact, the only way to reach it is by ferry from New London, Connecticut. So isolated from the rest of the Empire State, residents have long felt a stronger connection to their northern neighbors. Fisher's Island is a remote and striking outpost of New York geography, extending farther east than anywhere else in the state and standing like a sentinel at the entrance to Long Island Sound. 9. The Eternal Flame of Chestnut Ridge. Hidden in Chestnut Ridge Park in Orchard Park is a geological wonder that seems straight out of a fantasy tale. Behind a small waterfall lies a natural grotto where a flickering flame burns nearly year-round. This isn't a trick or man-made, it's a rare natural phenomenon caused by gas seeping through the shale rock. The gas comes from ancient organic matter buried thousands of feet underground, escaping through tiny cracks formed by tectonic shifts. The flame sits sheltered in a nook behind the waterfall, protected from wind and spray, allowing it to burn continuously unless deliberately put out. I've stood there in the mist, watching fire and water exist together in perfect balance, a moment that feels utterly magical and otherworldly. 8. The gravity-defying road of Middlesex. Geography isn't always as simple as a topographic map suggests, and nowhere is that more obvious than on a certain stretch of road in Middlesex. This is one of the world's famous gravity hills, where the landscape creates a striking optical illusion. If you stop your car at the bottom of the hill and shift into neutral, it seems to roll backward, uphill toward the top. I've tried it myself, and even though your brain knows gravity should pull you downward, your eyes insist you're moving against the laws of physics. The trick comes from the way the surrounding trees, the slope of the land, and the missing horizon confuse your sense of level. It's a natural prank, a subtle reminder that geography can play tricks on our senses in the most surprising ways. 7. The boiling pot of Canajoharie. In the village of Canajoharie, nestled in the heart of the Mohawk Valley, you'll find a geological feature that looks like a giant bathtub carved into the earth. Known as the boiling pot, these are massive glacial potholes etched into the limestone bedrock at the end of the last ice age. As the glaciers melted, torrents of swirling water carrying rocks and debris acted like natural drills, spinning in place and carving deep circular holes into the stone. Some of these potholes are over 20 feet deep and perfectly smooth. The village's name comes from a Mohawk word meaning the pot that washes itself, a reference to the way water twists and churns inside these stone basins. It's a stunning, lasting reminder of the immense power of the ancient floods that once shaped the entire valley. 6. The shifting spires of Chimney Bluffs. Along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, you'll find a landscape that feels more like the rugged badlands of the western United States than the forests of the Northeast. The Chimney Bluffs rise nearly 200 feet above the water as sharp, dramatic spires of clay and gravel. These formations are the remnants of a drumlin, a long hill of glacial debris left behind when the ice sheets retreated thousands of years ago. Over time, the relentless waves of the lake and harsh winter weather have worn away the sides of the hill, leaving behind these jagged, towering structures. The bluffs are constantly changing. Each heavy rainstorm or lake surge chips away at the soft clay so their appearance shifts from year to year. It's a fragile, stunning example of how the forces of the Great Lakes continue to shape and reshape the land. 5. The sandy shield of the Rockaways. New York City's geography isn't just defined by skyscrapers and streets, it is also protected by a chain of long, narrow barrier islands. Among the most important of these is the Rockaway Peninsula. Many people see it as a simple destination for surfing, swimming, and sunbathing, but in reality it serves as a crucial geological shield for the mainland. This stretch of sand absorbs much of the energy from the Atlantic Ocean, protecting Jamaica Bay and the southern shores of Brooklyn and Queens from the full force of massive storms. The peninsula is constantly shifting and reshaping itself through a process called longshore drift, where waves move sand along the coast like a slow, natural conveyor belt. Over decades and centuries, this motion has allowed the barrier to adjust and maintain its role as a first line of defense against erosion and flooding. Without it, the landscape of New York's southern coast would be dramatically different, with water and waves reaching far inland. Walking along the Rockaways, you realize that the city's geography is as much about sand, wind, and sea as it is about concrete and steel, a dynamic, living landscape that is always in motion. 4. The hidden winter of the ice caves. Deep in Minnewaska State Park Preserve, along the Shawangunk Ridge, lies a geological secret where winter seems to linger long after the rest of the region has warmed. The ice caves are narrow, deep cracks in the conglomerate rock, perfectly shielded from the sun, where snow and ice can survive well into July or even August. The shape and depth of these crevices create a natural refrigerator. Heavy, cold air sinks into the shaded openings and becomes trapped, unable to escape. Even on the hottest summer days, I've walked through these caves in the middle of a scorching August afternoon, and the temperature dropped nearly 30 degrees within seconds, creating an almost surreal experience. This hidden microclimate supports plants that normally grow only in the far north, in Arctic tundra regions, yet here they thrive quietly in the Hudson Valley. It's a striking reminder of how local geography can create pockets of climate and life that seem completely out of place, tucked away in plain sight. 3. The continental crossroads of the Triple Divide. In the gentle hills of Allegheny County, there's an unassuming spot of geography known as the Triple Divide. At first glance, it looks like just another quiet farm field, but it holds a remarkable secret. Here, a single drop of rain can take one of 3 entirely different journeys, depending on exactly where it lands. If it falls on one slope, it will flow into the Genesee River, eventually reaching Lake Ontario, and the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence River. A few inches away, it might enter the Allegheny River, join the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, and make its way all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Or, if it falls just slightly southeast, it could feed the Susquehanna River and ultimately reach the Chesapeake Bay. This small hill, so modest in appearance, is actually a continental crossroads, a rare point where the waters of the north, south, and east all diverge. Standing there, you can't help but marvel at the quiet power of the land, how something as simple as a raindrop can trace 3 vastly different paths across an entire continent. 2. The great silence of Howe Caverns. While much of New York's geography can be admired under the open sky, some of the state's most astonishing features lie hidden far beneath the surface. Howe Caverns, located in Schoharie County, is a sprawling underground world that was slowly carved over millions of years by a river cutting through layers of limestone. The result is a labyrinth of immense chambers filled with towering stalactites, jagged stalagmites, and intricate flowstone formations that resemble frozen waterfalls. One of the most unforgettable parts of the caverns is the underground lake, where visitors can glide across the water on a small boat surrounded by complete darkness and silence. The caves maintain a steady temperature of 52 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, no matter how hot or cold it is outside, adding to the sense of another world entirely. Walking through these limestone corridors, I was struck not only by the scale of the chambers, some high enough to dwarf a 10-story building, but also by the profound quiet, a heavy, almost tangible stillness that presses against you from all sides. It's a reminder that New York's geography is far more than rivers, mountains, and coastlines. Beneath our feet lies a hidden realm, shaped by time and water, waiting to be explored, a silent testament to the patient, unstoppable forces of nature that continue to shape the state in ways most people never see. 1. The true heart of the Empire State. As we reach the end of our journey through New York's incredible geography, it feels fitting to stop at the very center of it all. Many might assume the geographic heart of the state lies near Albany, the capital, or perhaps somewhere deep in the Adirondacks, but in fact it is located in Madison County. More precisely, the spot sits in the town of Eaton, near the tiny hamlet of Pratt's Hollow. A simple marker identifies this unassuming point as the exact middle of New York's boundaries, a quiet testament to the vastness of the Empire State. The area itself is the epitome of rural New York. Gentle rolling farmland, small wooded hills, and wide open skies stretch in every direction. It is a striking contrast to the concrete canyons and bustling energy of Manhattan at the state's southern edge. Standing here, you are truly at the geographic center. Equidistant from the farthest reaches of New York, from the sandy beaches of Long Island to the rocky shores of Lake Erie, from the wild forests of the Adirondacks to the winding valleys of the southern tier, there is a quiet, almost meditative power to being in this spot. It feels like you can sense the pulse of the entire state beneath your feet, a central node connecting every river, forest, mountain, and city across this vast land. The simplicity of the location belies its significance. In this peaceful corner of Madison County, you can imagine the journey of New York as a whole, stretching out in every direction, full of contrasts and surprises. It's a reminder that the Empire State is not just defined by its iconic skyline or famous landmarks, but by the full sweep of its geography, from hidden ice caves to soaring peaks, from sprawling lakes to quiet farm fields, all converging at this one modest, central point. Standing here, you can feel the true heart of New York, steady and enduring at the crossroads of the state's incredible natural and human-made landscapes. After exploring these 35 incredible facts about New York, we want to hear from you. Which one surprised you the most, or which fact did you find the coolest? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's see if others pick the same favorite. If you think we missed something or want to share your own fun fact about the Empire State, we'd love to read it. Your input makes every video better. And if you caught any little pronunciation mistakes along the way, thank you for your patience. We're always working to improve with each video. While you're here, there's another video on the screen that will let you continue exploring the amazing geography of our country. But before you click away, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so we can keep discovering together. See you in the next adventure.